After a night of reflection, Seok-hee decided to help Soo-jin get back the compensation money that rightfully belonged to her. Soo-jin was still a virgin at this point, so Seok-hee took her to the hospital for a checkup and clarification. Not only that, Seok-hee also brought a photo of Won-jun with another girl and went to see Mrs. Han. Then Seok-hee demanded that their family compensate Soo-jin. There, Soo-jin confidently presented a certificate proving that she was still a virgin. Everyone was puzzled because they thought Soo-jin had an affair with the chef. It turned out that Soo-jin had only been unfaithful in her thoughts. Thanks to growing up in an educated family, Soo-jin knew how to protect himself. As a result, Soo-jin successfully received the compensation money. After a long investigation, Yoon-do found journalist Kim. Journalist Kim agreed to help this determined young man. Thus, the two collaborated to find the truth. When Yoon-do told Seok-hee about this, Seok-hee also shared the progress of her investigation. Seok-hee hired a private investigator to investigate her brother's lover. Unexpectedly, Seok-hee discovered that Won-jun was a member of the LGBT community, returning to the moment when Mrs. Han came to find Won-jun to confirm whether he was LGBT. Won-jun still tried to cover it up by asking Mrs. Han if she had a picture of his lover. After that, Mrs. Han showed him a picture of Won-jun disguised as a woman. Nevertheless, Mrs. Han agreed to help Won-jun cover up everything. Meanwhile, journalist Kim contacted Yoon-do. He revealed that 15 years ago, after Seok-hee's mother passed away, Mrs. Han deleted the surveillance video from that day. The housekeeper then secretly called journalist Kim to inform him of the incident, and he wrote an article about it. Unfortunately, the article was immediately removed upon publication, and journalist Kim was fired. Afterward, journalist Kim showed everyone a video. The video showed images of all the family members, including the chairman, his wife, the eldest son, the second son, and Mrs. Han. In other words, everyone could be a suspect. To find the culprit, it was necessary to know the specific time Seok-hee's mother was murdered. From there, they could search for those who were present at that time. They were the prime suspects. Unfortunately, the time of Seok-hee's mother's death was only recorded in the case file. However, this file was sealed by Mrs. Han, and they don't know where it's currently stored. Journalist Kim suggested they could find clues from the judge who handled the case that year, but that person has been missing for many years. However, Yoon-do easily found the judge's address with the help of his police friend. Seok-hee believes her mother discovered Won-jun was LGBT, and this led to her mother's death. Back home, Seok-hee continues to question Won-jun about his secret. However, Won-jun remains calm and doesn't reveal any weaknesses. Meanwhile, Mrs. Han has gone to see Chairman Mo to quickly arrange for Won-jun to inherit the shares. She must have feared that Chairman Mo would change his mind after knowing her son's secret. Seok-hee's mother was a famous painter when she was alive, so Mrs. Mo wanted to claim her mother's legacy for herself. However, Mrs. Han warned Mrs. Mo against doing so, because with Seok-hee's intelligence, she would definitely discover the clues. If that happened, everything would be exposed. Meanwhile, Seok-hee discovered a cross-dressing person she found familiar. It turned out that Seok-hee had previously found the person who planned the art exhibition that year. This person was quite close to Seok-hee's mother and had provided Seok-hee with a picture of Won-jun cross-dressing. Seok-hee felt increasingly suspicious of Won-jun. The other person said that recently, many paintings with a similar style to Seok-hee's mother had appeared on the market. Seok-hee immediately felt something was very strange, so she drove to her stepmother's gallery. Sure enough, Seok-hee discovered that her biological mother's painting had become her stepmother's work. Thinking of this, Seok-hee angrily threw the artwork to the ground. Top's office received the news and immediately sent someone over. Yoon-do pulled Seok-hee away from the scene. With this incident of art theft, it's possible that Mrs. Mo is the culprit behind Seok-hee's mother's death. On her stepmother's birthday, the whole family held an intimate gathering. People from the upper class sent valuable gifts. Among them was a very special gift, a stack of photos. When Mrs. Mo saw the photos, she panicked for 5 seconds. She never expected them to be pictures of her second son dressed as a woman. Chairman Mo, sitting beside her, noticed his wife's strange expression and snatched the photos away. At that moment, Chairman Mo saw a beautiful girl with his son's face, which enraged him to the point of madness. Chairman Mo couldn't believe his son was LGBT. He then questioned Won-jun, hoping he would deny it, but knowing the secret couldn't be kept any longer, Won-jun confessed. Hearing this, the father angrily chased his son out and then left himself. In fact, Mrs. Mo had long realized her son had a problem, but even with Won-jun's different sexual orientation, he was still the son she loved most. Therefore, Mrs. Mo would still find a way for Won-jun to become the heir to the MC group. Mrs. Han warned Won-jun not to act rashly, otherwise he wouldn't even be be able to keep 15% of the shares. Of course, Mrs. Han was also more wary of Won-soo and Seo-ki. As for Won-jun, he successfully signed a contract with an important foreign company. It turned out that the chairman of the partner company was also gay. Because the two had many things in common, they easily talked. Miss Han recognized Won-jun as a strong candidate for the chairmanship. However, after knowing about Won-jun's homosexuality, Chairman Mo wanted to change the air. Miss Han expressed her opinion that sexual orientation does not affect the company's business operations. At the same time, Top would be responsible for covering up the issue. Then Miss Han summoned everyone to brainstorm solutions. Yoon-do suggested using this situation to tap into a new market. Regarding preventing Won-jun's cross-dressing image from being exposed, Yoon-do suggested they produce a film about gay people, then have Won-jun appear in disguise as a woman. Therefore, if those photos were to leak out later, Won-jun wearing women's clothes wouldn't be a big problem. Mrs. Han was very pleased with Yoon-do's idea. On the other hand, the butler from that year also tried to escape the surveillance of the Top organization. The butler went to Yoon-do's father's barbecue restaurant to wait to meet Yoon-do. Unexpectedly, for many years, Butler Jung had been secretly searching for the judge from that year. Finally, Butler Jung investigated and found out that Judge Lee and his wife had settled in the United States. This lawyer went to the US and through an acquaintance, knew that Judge Lee would be returning to Korea. Because this case was not easy to get retried, everything had to be prepared as thoroughly as possible. Sure enough, Judge Lee quietly returned to Korea. It turned out that his wife was seriously ill that year. To save her, he reluctantly cooperated with the Top organization. But as soon as the case concluded, he resigned and moved his family to the United States. Furthermore, the case file from that year was handed over to Yoon-do. Judge Lee hoped that Yoon-do could soon uncover the truth of the case. After studying the file, Yoon-do discovered that Seo-ki's mother died at 4 p.m. Yoon-do recalled that on that day, his mother had been asked to return to work early. Therefore, she didn't have time to cook and could only go to the convenience store to buy some instant noodles for Yoon-do. From the time the receipt was issued, the time she returned to the mansion could be inferred, and it coincided with the time Seo-ki's mother was murdered. If this is true, then Yoon-do's mother still cannot escape suspicion. Meanwhile, Chairman Mo still cannot accept that his son is gay. Therefore, Chairman Mo wants to support his eldest son to become the heir to the corporation. Unexpectedly, Chairman Mo faced strong opposition from Mrs. Han. Mrs. Han argued that Won-soo was a free spirit and art lover, making him fundamentally unsuitable to manage the corporation. A heated argument ensued between the two due to their differing opinions. Mrs. Han returned to Top's office to seek everyone's opinion on Chairman Mo's choice of his eldest son as heir. Surprisingly, everyone agreed with the plan. At that moment, Won-soo entered, presenting Mrs. Han with a large bouquet of flowers, hoping to gain her support. However, Mrs. Han coldly declared that she would not bet on Won-soo. Meanwhile, Yoon-do and Seo-ki were still discussing how to overthrow Mrs. Han. Finally, Seo-ki approached the prosecutor, hoping for his help. However, the prosecutor seemed to disdain Seo-ki. Without further ado, Seo-ki presented evidence of the prosecutor's corruption. Threatened and frightened, he reported to Mrs. Han. Hearing this, Mrs. Han felt helpless with this weak man. However, thanks to this, Mrs. Han discovered Seo-ki's ultimate goal, the case from 15 years ago. Because Mrs. Han had cleaned up all traces from that year, she couldn't understand where Seo-ki had found the clue. At the same time, Top discovered that Judge Lee had secretly returned to the country. Furthermore, they found out that Yoon-do and Seo-ki had gone to a nightclub together. But they didn't go there to have fun. They borrowed a VIP room to hold a meeting. They also discovered a clue about the nanny from that year. After connecting these clues, Mrs. Han deduced that Yoon-do was the son of the nanny from that year. That's why Yoon-do cooperated with Seo-ki to investigate the case from 15 years ago. Miss Han immediately instructed her subordinates to respond urgently. At the same time, she summoned Yoon-do to her private office for a confrontation. Upon meeting Yoon-do, Min Han directly addressed the issue. She knew about their plan, but there was a legal problem. Yoon-do was not the nanny's biological son, so he had no right to file for retrial. However, Yoon-do replied that although he couldn't use his status as a son, he could file as a lawyer. Miss Han quickly fabricated evidence of Yoon-do's embezzlement and sent people to arrest him. Seo-ki and Yoon-do's investigation, which had just begun to make progress, was obstructed by Miss Han. Furthermore, Miss Han used her power to send Yoon-do's police friend to the Ministry of Transportation. Not stopping there, Miss Han also ordered her subordinates to vandalize journalist Kim's office. Upon receiving this news, Seo-ki immediately drove to meet Miss Han. At this point, Mrs. Han seized the opportunity to demand that So-ki stop trying to retry the case. Only then would Yoon-do be released from prison. However, So-ki was not easily swayed. So-ki and Yoon-do were determined to see this through to the end. Moreover, So-ki was determined to find a way to get Yoon-do out of prison. Although So-ki's resolve was firm, Mrs. Han was not easily swayed. She then continued to pressure them. Even Yoon-do's father's shop was not spared. Under the pretext of searching for evidence, they ransacked his shop. Even worse, they pushed Yoon-do's father to the ground. Finally, Miss Han personally went to see Yoon-do's father. She said that if he could persuade his son to withdraw his request for a retrial, his son could return home safely. Otherwise, she would cause Yoon-do to lose his lawyer's license and become a person with a criminal record. However, Yoon-do's father flatly refused. He supported his son in speaking up for justice. Miss Han sneered and sarcastically remarked that for some people, losing is their life. Yoon-do's father, hearing this, angrily threw water at the woman. When So-ki arrived, Yoon-do's father tearfully begged her to find a way to save his son. Hearing this, So-ki affirmed that she would definitely save Yoon-do. Unexpectedly, when So-ki went to see Yoon-do, she ran into an acquaintance. The prosecutor presiding over Yoon-do's trial was the same prosecutor she had been on a blind date with. Afterwards, So-ki told Yoon-do about Miss Han's offer, but Yoon-do disagreed because this was the opportunity they had worked so hard to obtain. However, they now only have 48 hours before Yoon-do is transferred to the detention cell. If Yoon-do doesn't compromise, So-ki can only try her best. While So-ki was thinking of a way to rescue Yoon-do, she coincidentally met journalist Kim and his secretary. They both emphasized not giving up and searching for evidence. So-ki had previously knew that the murderer of her grandfather was that wicked woman. She quickly found the person who managed her grandfather's meals that day. It turned out that Mrs. Han had sent almond sauce to So-ki's grandfather. This was the indirect cause of his death. So-ki wanted to use this opportunity to use both old and new evidence to overthrow Mrs. Han. Since the incident involving So-ki's mother, the surveillance video had been stolen. The evidence was that the prosecutor had lost important documents. Meanwhile, journalist Kim and police officer Oh found the police officer responsible for the case that year. The officer had provided surveillance video to the prosecutor, but the prosecutor had deleted the evidence. This crime could carry a sentence of up to 5 years in prison. Afterward, So-ki met with Won-soo. Clearly, for Won-soo, the biggest obstacle to inheriting the MC group was Mrs. Han. For this reason, So-ki wanted the two to cooperate. Although somewhat hesitant, Won-soo was cautious and didn't rush to agree to So-ki's proposal. Instead, Won-soo decided to sound out Mrs. Han's opinion first. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Han said that Won-soo should continue as a director. At this point, Won-soo was certain that he wouldn't have Miss Han's support for inheriting the group, so he accepted So-ki's proposal. Recently, Chairman Mo and Miss Han have frequently disagreed on the issue of succession, so Won-soo also sounded out her father's opinion of Miss Han. Won-soo told her father that the MC group is now effectively under Miss Han's control, and hinted that the position should be replaced. These words touched a sensitive spot for her father. Since taking over as chairman, he has always been wary of Miss Han. While he is the chairman, the real power lies with Miss Han. Therefore, Chairman Mo remained silent, implicitly agreeing with Won-soo. Won-soo recounted all these reactions in detail to So-ki, so So-ki no longer needed to worry about her father protecting that wicked woman. Afterwards, So-ki arranged a meeting with Judge Lee. So-ki expressed her wish for Judge Lee to help her get Miss Han imprisoned. If Judge Lee doesn't support her, So-ki will destroy the evidence from that year's case. But if the plan succeeds, So-ki will help Judge Lee become the chief judge. So-ki also shared that Chairman Mo and Miss Han have a very complicated relationship related to inheritance issues. If the judge wants to have a close relationship with Chairman Mo, the only way is for him to eliminate Miss Han and cooperate with her. However, Judge Lee believes that relying solely on their power would make it difficult to convict Miss Han. Therefore, So-ki added that she also possesses other important evidence. Her grandfather's catering manager provided testimony, and So-ki also has a recording of Miss Han admitting to plotting against So-ki's grandfather. In addition, there is the testimony of Won-soo. Won-soo stated that Miss Han instructed him to lie to the public about being the biological father of actress Nari's son. All of this is certainly enough to convict Miss Han. After much deliberation, Judge Lee finally decided to follow So-ki's plan. Judge Lee visited Chairman Mo to gauge his reaction. Judge Lee indicated that he would arrest Miss Han, but Chairman Mo didn't seem very interested. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Ju questioned Yoon-do. Yoon-do presented arguments and evidence proving his innocence. Furthermore, Yoon-do taunted Prosecutor Ju and his father, implying they were merely tools for Top to exploit. The prosecutor, having been hit where it hurt, couldn't argue back and left in frustration. Judge Lee summoned him to his private office. Judge Lee instructed Prosecutor Go to release Yoon-do so they could focus their efforts on dealing with Miss Han. Thanks to Seo-ki's efforts, Yoon-do was finally released. As soon as Yoon-do went outside, he saw Seo-ki waiting. So, Yoon-do excitedly approached and kissed Seo-ki on the lips. This unexpected kiss made both of them feel a little awkward. Not long after, the police arrested Mrs. Han. Next, Seo-ki and Yoon-do met with Judge Lee. The judge expressed that he would quickly arrange for Yoon-do's mother's release from prison. However, Yoon-do said that his mother was a very honorable person and would not agree to be released without being exonerated. Judge Lee listened and understood the situation, but he advised them to abandon the idea. However, the two still secretly filed an application for a retrial of the case from that year. At the same time, Chairman Mo summoned the leader of Top to his office. Chairman Mo expressed his desire to relinquish some functions in the executive board in exchange for stability for the corporation. At the same time, Chairman Mo also hinted that he would let the other party take over Top in place of Mrs. Han. However, Top's employees were all loyal to Miss Han, so he remained unwavering and even tried to save her. Later, the team leader went to the prison to see Miss Han. Miss Han ordered her subordinates to immediately bring someone to assist with the retrial to the United States and informed Judge Lee that Seo-ki's group had filed a request for a retrial of the old case. The judge did not want his crimes from that year exposed, so he could only continue to cooperate with Miss Han. Thus, Miss Han's release was only a matter of time. This made Seo-ki and Yoon-do's plan much more difficult, because Judge Lee changed his mind. If they filed a retrial request, it would be difficult for it to be approved, but they couldn't give up and had no choice but to fight to the end. Yoon-do, as the lawyer representing his mother, filed a request for a retrial of the case. After a long time, news of the old case once again attracted public attention. Everyone in the MC group was stunned upon receiving this news. Mrs. Mo and an art gallery employee met. Mrs. Mo gave the other party a valuable gift, hoping they would help her cover up what happened at the exhibition. This scene was inadvertently witnessed by her second son. Wonjun felt strange seeing his mother act this way, wondering if she was hiding something. At this time, Chairman Mo was talking to Mrs. Han. Mrs. Han asserted that she would find a way to remove the retrial application. Chairman Mo only asked if Mrs. Han still wanted Wonjun to become the heir. Mrs. Han confirmed that she did, and therefore decided to eliminate Prosecutor Ju. A series of incriminating evidence against Prosecutor Ju was presented, quickly sparking public discussion. Under pressure from public opinion, the prosecutor resigned to take over the investigation. It seems Prosecutor Ju had prepared for this situation. However, Miss Han's influence was truly formidable. Miss Han continued to order her subordinates to expose the wrongdoings of Prosecutor Ju's son. Not wanting to affect her son, Prosecutor Ju chose to end his own life. Won-soo once again sought support from Mrs. Han, but unfortunately, Mrs. Han remained steadfast in her initial choice. Won-soo revealed that 30 years ago, her grandfather had an illegitimate child, and because of this, her grandmother fell into depression and committed a rash act. The illegitimate child then disappeared without a trace. Won-soo believed that Mrs. Han was responsible for handling this matter. Upon receiving this information, Mrs. Han immediately connected it to the fact that her grandfather had always loved his granddaughter, Seo-ki. Furthermore, both her grandfather's name and Seo-ki's name contained the character he. Clearly, something was amiss. Mrs. Han immediately tracked down the former housekeeper. As expected, Seo-ki was indeed her grandfather's daughter. After discovering the truth, Mrs. Han took the DNA test report to Chairman Mo, where she revealed the truth. Chairman Mo's daughter was actually his younger sister. Chairman Mo was so shocked by the news that he suffered a brain hemorrhage and fainted, making the situation even more chaotic. Seo-ki suspected that Mrs. Han was behind the incident and that her goal was for Wonjun to inherit the corporation. Without Chairman Mo's interference, Wonjun's inheritance would face no obstacles. Since Prosecutor Ju was forced to his death by Mrs. Han, her son had been waiting for an opportunity for revenge. He decided to cooperate with Seo-ki's group to overthrow her. Together, they gathered evidence of her crimes to send Mrs. Han to prison. To show their sincerity, Woo-sung gave them the case file of Yoon-do's mother. When Yoon-do looked through the file, the truth was revealed. It turned out that Seo-ki's mother died between 1 to 2 p.m. At this time, Yoon-do was with his mother, giving her a perfect alibi. However, there was a significant discrepancy between the actual time and the time recorded in the surveillance video. They discovered that Chairman Mo and Mrs. Han both arrived after Seo-ki's mother died, thus ruling out suspicion against them. The only remaining suspects were Mrs. Mo and her 2 sons. After much speculation, they concluded that all 3 suspects seemed connected to Seo-ki's mother's death, making identification of the culprit extremely difficult. Seo-ki and Yoon-do found Soo-jin. Soo-jin's life after the divorce was peaceful and happy. She still wore the necklace Seo-ki had given her. In fact, inside the necklace was a memory card containing evidence that Mrs. Han had sent someone to seduce and entice Soo-jin into an affair. Seo-ki wanted this person to testify. Mrs. Han still believed everything was going according to plan. However, she didn't anticipate the housekeeper coming to find Seo-ki. The housekeeper revealed that Seo-ki was her grandfather's biological daughter, while her deceased mother wasn't her biological mother. At this moment, Seo-ki found it hard to accept. She ran away, sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing Seo-ki like this, Yoon-do could only comfort her. But Seo-ki wasn't a weak woman. Soon, she overcame the shock. She decided to use this opportunity to apply for a redistribution of MC Group shares. This action cleverly hindered Won-jun from inheriting the chairmanship. Seo-ki confronted Mrs. Han about this. She suspected that Mrs. Han had told Chairman Mo this information, causing him to be shocked and suddenly suffer a brain hemorrhage. Mrs. Han frankly admitted and even loudly declared that she did everything for the MC Group. She also advised Seo-ki to live up to her responsibilities. However, Seo-ki showed that she would destroy all of Mrs. Han's plans. Seo-ki returned home and revealed her true identity, astonishing everyone. Seo-ki's status immediately rose. Her stepmother, finding herself having to change her way of addressing her, was unacceptable. Her 2 older brothers now became Seo-ki's nephews. Afterward, the whole family went to Mrs. Han to verify whether what Seo-ki said was true. The answer surprised them all. Seo-ki was indeed the daughter of their grandfather. Chairman Mo was being treated at the hospital, but the family didn't seem to be grieving. Mrs. Mo and her second son were only focused on finding a way to inherit the family fortune. Won-jun worried that Seo-ki's identity would affect the distribution of the corporation's shares. However, Mrs. Han reassured Won-jun that she didn't need to worry, as she had destroyed the documents, proving Seo-ki's identity. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Mrs. Han quickly arranged for Won-jun to inherit the company. However, Won-soo stubbornly sought out Mrs. Han, hoping to receive her support once again, but as always, Won-soo was rejected. Mrs. Han bluntly stated that Won-soo was completely unsuitable to be the CEO of MC, as he had previously murdered someone. It turned out that Mrs. Han had known all along that Won-soo was the murderer of Seo-ki's mother. Everything stemmed from the mother's favoritism towards her 2 sons. In the Mo family, the younger brother was the favored child, while the older brother never received any attention or recognition from his mother. Won-soo even frequently endured ridicule and unfair treatment from his mother. Therefore, Won-soo had always hoped to receive recognition from his family, especially his mother. Won-soo knew that his mother was suffering because of Seo-ki's mother, so Won-soo decided to go to Seo-ki's mother to persuade her to agree to a divorce. Unexpectedly, the whole family came to see her that day. First was the second son, Won-jun. Won-jun came to beg Seo-ki's mother to help him hide his cross-dressing. Seo-ki's mother was a beautiful and kind woman. She promised to help Won-jun keep the secret and even blessed him. Then, her husband's mistress, the current Mrs. Mo, came to see her. She not only provoked but also mocked Seo-ki's mother, saying that her husband had abandoned her. She even asserted that the 2 would soon divorce. Seo-ki's mother was not a weak person, so the 2 had a fierce argument. In the end, Seo-ki's mother sat alone in a bad mood. She scribbled on the painting to vent her anger. However, not long after, Won-soo arrived, bringing a bottle of red wine and a book. Won-soo begged Seo-ki's mother to divorce his father. Seo-ki's mother, finding the trouble unbearable, flatly refused Won-soo. As Won-soo was about to leave, he overheard Seo-ki's mother saying to the painting that it was a worthless piece of art. Remembering his own mother had said the same thing to him, Won-soo became angry, believing Seo-ki's mother was mocking him. In a moment of rage, Won-soo attacked her. After calming down, Won-soo realized he had unintentionally killed someone, so he panicked and fled the scene. Shortly afterward, Chairman Mo arrived and discovered his wife dead. Looking at the evidence at the scene, Chairman Mo suspected the murderer was a family member. Therefore, Chairman Mo called Mrs. Han to handle the crime scene. Back in the present, Seo-ki still hasn't found the main suspect in that year's case, so she decides to return home to investigate further. Seo-ki decides to go to Mrs. Mo first. Seo-ki questions Mrs. Mo about why there was a bottle of red wine at the crime scene, especially since it was Mrs. Mo's favorite wine. Mrs. Mo insists that she only drinks with people she loves and would absolutely never drink with someone she hates. Moreover, she couldn't possibly get involved in a murder case because of someone she hates. After that, So-ki goes to the second young master, Won-jun. Won-jun says that So-ki's mother didn't exploit his weaknesses to attack him, so he has no reason to kill her. So-ki finds both their explanations very reasonable, so she decides to continue investigating young master Won-soo. So-ki questioned Won-soo about why he went looking for his mother on the day of the crime, but Won-soo gave a very vague explanation. Won-soo then half-jokingly told So-ki that he was the culprit. It seemed Won-soo was aware that So-ki suspected him, so he planned to confess his guilt. However, this required great courage, so he arranged to meet Yoon-do for drinks. Won-soo continued to half-jokingly admit he was the murderer, which made Yoon-do somewhat suspicious. Soon after, the MC Group's shareholders meeting proceeded as scheduled. Mrs. Han invited all the prominent figures in the business world to attend. This time, Mrs. Han wanted to introduce the new successor to the group. Everyone gathered, and everything seemed to be under Mrs. Han's control. But at that crucial moment, the meeting room door suddenly burst open. So-ki and Yoon-do strode in, followed by a group led by Milk Witch, the woman who had once caused a stir in the Korean financial world with a single investment decision. Milk Witch's appearance silenced the entire room. No one suspected that their grandfather had planned everything while he was alive. He left behind a copy of the paternity test results between him and So-ki, which he then entrusted to his trusted friend, Milk Witch. Thanks to that document, So-ki was immediately legally recognized as the legitimate heir to the corporation. Everyone was even more stunned when Milk Witch announced she was transferring all her shares to So-ki. From someone who had been sidelined from power, So-ki suddenly became the largest shareholder. The situation changed in the blink of an eye. The decision to appoint Won-jun as chairman was immediately cancelled. Mrs. Han could no longer maintain her usual proud demeanor. However, Mrs. Han's survival instincts quickly kicked in. Unwilling to accept defeat, she began buying shares from small shareholders. She wanted to regain control of the company. But So-hee and Yoon-do anticipated this move, so they secretly collaborated with the prosecutor to investigate the illegal activities of the Mo family. A few days later, shocking news broke. Mrs. Mo was arrested for fraud and copyright infringement. She was also prosecuted for illegal transactions and abuse of power. The once glorious MC Group finally collapsed. So-hee and Yoon-do sought out Won-soo hoping to hear the truth about the case from years ago. Won-soo didn't resist. He calmly informed them that he had handed over the evidence to the prosecutor. The evidence Won-soo referred to was a video confession. In that video, Won-soo confessed to all his crimes. He said that he had wanted to confront So-ki directly, but ultimately lacked the courage. The video ended with a choked sigh. Not long after, the police officially issued an arrest warrant for Won-soo. The next morning, So-ki stood silently looking through the glass window. From now on, So-ki could control her own destiny. When the police raided Won-soo's villa, the melodious music still echoed throughout the room. The scent of red wine lingered in the air, and the yellow light illuminated the calm face of the man sitting at the wooden table. But when they approached, the scene before them shocked everyone. Won-soo had quietly chosen to end his own life. So-ki stood motionless for a long time, her mind blank. That man had once destroyed her mother, and he had plunged her childhood into the darkness of suffering and hatred. But now that he was gone, she felt both relief and emptiness. After all, Won-soo was still her blood relative. With the case closed, the prosecutor quickly requested a search warrant for the top group. This news sent shockwaves through the financial world. Yet, Mrs. Han remained calm. The game was nearing its end, but Mrs. Han wasn't easily defeated. It turned out that she had prepared an escape route from the beginning. She had hidden the evidence damaging to her. When the prosecutor began the trial, Mrs. Han used that very evidence to secure the fate of the group. Soon after, the agreement was reached. The prosecutor agreed to hold Mrs. Han was entirely responsible for the illegal activities, with the MC Group being excluded. The MC Group was where Mrs. Han had poured her heart and soul into building it, and it was also where she lost herself. Even in her final moments, Mrs. Han remained absolutely loyal to the group. The trial took place, and Mrs. Han was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The murder of the madam, 15 years ago, was finally solved. Yoon-do's mother wept emotionally in her son's arms upon hearing the verdict. On the other side, Mrs. Mo and her son were sentenced. The MC Group quickly entered a new era. Unsurprisingly, So-ki became the official heir, and the top organization was handed over to Yoon-do. Immediately after taking power, Yoon-do disbanded the entire old team. Then, Yoon-do recruited new personnel and announced the re-establishment of Top under a different form. In the first meeting, Yoon-do recounted the organization's dark history to the new members. Yoon-do affirmed that from now on, Top would never commit any illegal acts again. Soki walked away, her eyes no longer filled with the resentment they once held. Instead, she carried the belief that justice had finally been served. Before leaving this world, Won-soo had secretly left 2 final gifts for his mother and younger brother. When things gradually calmed down, Soki returned those gifts to them. The gift for Won-jun was the brooch that had been lost years ago. It turned out that Won-soo had known for a long time that Won-jun belonged to the LGBT community. The gift for his mother was a painting Won-soo had drawn as a child. In the painting was the image of his gentle and kind mother, the role model he had always longed for. Many years ago, Won-soo intended to give that painting to his mother, but at that time, his mother was grieving the loss of her youngest son. In her despair, she uttered words that broke Won-soo's heart. From that moment, Won-soo understood that he was worthless to his mother. In a family full of ambition and scheming, perhaps the eldest son was the most virtuous. He chose silence and retreated into his own cinematic world. He used the lens to tell stories instead of expressing his unspoken emotions. He never craved power or money, for all he wanted was a little affection from his cold mother. When all the tragedy ended, Soki held a small party at home and invited everyone to thank and say goodbye. Because she decided to study abroad and learn more about law, she handed over the MC group to a professional team. Now she chose a peaceful life. Time passed quickly. A few years later, Yoon-do kept his promise to continue working as a lawyer defending justice. One day, Yoon-do received news that someone was being detained at the police station, and that person requested his services as their lawyer. Without hesitation, Yoon-do immediately ran there. But when the interrogation room door opened, Yoon-do was surprised to see Soki waiting for him. She had finished her studies and returned to the country. After many years, the two met again, but the feeling of distance was not at all. Finally, the two happily held hands and shared a warm kiss in the middle of the street. Elsewhere, those who had been convicted had also completed their sentences one by one. Mrs. Han had been released. As Mrs. Han walked out of the prison gate, the former members of Top were waiting and bowed. The luxury car rolled away into the sunset. No one knew where they were going, but in Mrs. Han's eyes, there was still a coldness and calculation. The drama ends here. Thank you for your interest and for watching. Goodbye and see you again.